Hello everybody, and welcome back. Make sure you like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Today we're diving into the electoral map and discussing Donald Trump's impressive victory in 2024, where he secured 312 electoral votes. But it's not just the number of votes that's significant, it's the margins by which he won in certain areas that really stand out. For years, we've heard from Democrats that certain states would become permanent blue strongholds for various reasons, predicting that the Republican Party would fade away and become a regional party. While there's some truth to that logic, especially considering that many recent immigrants tend to vote Democrat, it's also true that before Trump, the Republican Party was struggling to connect with certain voters. Donald Trump changed the game by appealing to voters in key parts of the Midwest and extending his working-class appeal to many minority groups, particularly younger minorities. In 2024, he won about 45 to 46% of the Hispanic vote, and he even won Hispanic men outright as a Republican. Additionally, he captured around 30% of black men under 30, which was double his margin among that same group in 2020. This shift has left Democrats in disarray. In today's video, I want to outline 5 states that Democrats once believed would become their strongholds, states they thought would turn blue and never look back, effectively locking the Republican Party out of power forever. Let's start with North Carolina. All of the states we'll discuss, with perhaps the exception of North Carolina, are now red states and are likely to remain that way for the foreseeable future. We won't be covering Georgia, as the jury is still out there, nor will we discuss states like New Jersey that haven't flipped yet but still show signs of potential change. North Carolina is a prime example. There was a lot of talk about Kamala Harris putting her energy and resources into North Carolina, believing it could flip blue. However, it did not. Many claim that the Raleigh-Durham area was growing and would turn blue as a result. Interestingly, we actually saw a minimal rightward shift in the research triangle, as younger voters began to lean more conservative. Additionally, many retirees moved to eastern North Carolina, and they were undercounted in the census, which shifted the area significantly to the right. Trump's gains among black voters also helped in certain parts of North Carolina's 1st District and in Mecklenburg County. There's a common misconception that if a county is large, like a suburb or a city, it will automatically move left. While there was some leftward shift among college-educated white voters, the overall turnout in certain parts of the Charlotte metro area was relatively minimal. Trump gained ground in more populous areas like Union County, and if you look at the registration data for Republicans, they continue to surge after the election. I believe they've flipped the state in terms of active registration. While North Carolina still gives Democrats the benefit of the doubt, the trend is clear. Mark Robinson's influence has been significant, and without him, Republicans might have swept the state at the state level and maintained their supermajorities in the chambers. The idea that a state's growth or leftward shift from 2004 to 2008 or 2016 to 2020 would continue indefinitely is simply incorrect. There's still plenty of room for Republicans to grow in North Carolina. I expect the state to remain competitive, though it won't be quite like Florida. Democrats had hoped that Kamala Harris would win North Carolina and that it would become a blue stronghold. But that's not how it's playing out. If anything, it seems poised to continue as a Republican stronghold, even if the margins aren't overwhelming. Next, let's talk about Florida. This is the 2nd state where Democrats believe they could make significant inroads. They claim that the Hispanic population, particularly Cubans in Miami, would shift the state blue after Hillary Clinton gained ground there in 2016. However, Trump flipped the state back, and Democrats thought that in the long run, Florida would turn blue. They pointed to felons gaining the right to vote, but the data shows that those who restored their voting rights were not overwhelmingly registering as Democrats. Interestingly, there's been a shift in that demographic as well. In Chicago, for example, Trump gained significant support in precincts where he previously struggled. The bottom line is that Democrats really hoped Florida would become a blue state, especially after they had a registration advantage, but that advantage has evaporated. Since Trump's first election in 2016, there's been a net swing of about 2 million voters. Trump has made massive gains among Hispanic voters in Florida, not just Cubans, but also Venezuelans and Puerto Ricans. Remember the predictions that a comedian's joke would doom Trump? He ended up flipping the most Puerto Rican county in the entire country, which was a huge win. Ultimately, he won Florida by 1.5 million votes and secured a victory margin of 13%. It was a statement win for him and the Republican Party. The registration data for Republicans in Florida shows they are doing exceptionally well. Even the amendments for abortion and marijuana that Democrats tried to pass failed to meet the 60% threshold needed for approval, which was surprising given the political climate. Florida has essentially become the Republican version of California. Democrats had hoped to make Florida a permanent blue state after Obama won it twice, but Republicans have flipped the script. Now it stands as a solid red state, and the trends indicate that it will remain that way for the foreseeable future. Now let's move on to Texas, which is perhaps the biggest state where Democrats had high hopes. Many believe that 2020 would be the year Texas turned blue, but the data simply wasn't there to support that. While Democrats ran some close races in 2018 and 2020, Trump won Texas in 2024 by margins we haven't seen since Mitt Romney in 2012. The Democrats have long claimed that Blexit would be a game changer, asserting that the Republican Party couldn't win without it. While that was true to some extent, the reality is that many third-generation Hispanic voters are shifting their allegiances. First-generation Hispanic voters tended to vote Democrat, but the third-generation and Tejano voters, who have deep roots in Texas, are increasingly aligning with the Republican Party. In South Texas, we've seen incredible shifts to the right. Trump flipped counties like Laredo, McAllen, and Brownsville, places that Republicans hadn't won in decades. Additionally, he performed well among working-class voters in the suburbs, even gaining ground with college-educated white voters in certain affluent areas. For instance, Collin County, which many thought could flip from blue to red, saw Republicans win by 11 points. While no counties flipped from blue to red in 2024, the overall trend in Texas is promising for Republicans. It's unlikely that Texas will become a solidly blue state anytime soon. Even Ted Cruz, who won by a narrow margin in 2018, saw a significant increase in his victory margin in 2024, winning by about 10 points with Trump on the ticket. This was a race where Democrats invested heavily, hoping to flip the state, but it didn't pan out as they had hoped. The perfect storm for Democrats in Texas in 2018 and 2020 was largely due to the shifting demographics of Hispanic voters and the suburban white vote. However, it seems that many of those shifts are now baked into the cake. The Hispanic vote has moved more toward the Republican side, and if this trend continues, it will solidify Texas as a red state. Next, we have Arizona, another state that Democrats believed they could secure. The suburban shift in the Phoenix area had initially given them hope, but recent trends indicate a significant rightward movement. Certain working-class and Hispanic areas in South Phoenix have shifted dramatically to the right. Younger voters, particularly those aged 18 to 24, are also moving right, and there are plenty of them in the Phoenix and Tucson areas. The registration data for Republicans in Arizona has improved significantly, and they've regained a registration edge that they had almost lost. In Maricopa County, which is the most populous county in Arizona, there was a rightward shift of about 6 points, and Tucson also moved right. The state is now voting similarly to how it did in the 2000s, leaning toward Trump. In 2024, Arizona voted for Trump by a margin of about 5 to 6 points, which is a significant change from previous elections. Democrats had hoped to secure Arizona for good, but they underestimated the electoral nuances at play. Finally, let's discuss Nevada, which is the fifth state on our list. Las Vegas is a working-class area, and even in 2020, it moved to the right. Nevada has the lowest percentage of professional-class voters of any state, which bodes well for Republicans, especially as they continue to improve their standing with Hispanic voters. In recent years, Republicans have netted about 100,000 new voters in Nevada, and this trend is translating into electoral success. In 2024, Trump won Nevada by 46,000 votes, and the state is becoming increasingly competitive. Clark County, which includes Las Vegas, almost flipped Republican, and it's possible that it could do so in 2028. In summary, we've outlined 5 states that Democrats once believed would be their ticket to locking Republicans out of power forever. However, the current electoral map tells a different story. If North Carolina remains lean Republican, we could be looking at an electoral landscape where Republicans start with around 263 electoral votes. They would only need to add one more state to secure a majority.